our next talker, who worked quite often with Josh actually in a former life, Dave Tosh. He has studied mammals all over Ireland, various small mammals and big mammals, and also, of course, pine martens. He has banished himself to Rathlin, where there are no pine martens, but I think he's working on ferrets now. But anyway, we're not going to hear about that today. Dave, tell us what you know about pine martens, please. Thanks.
Okay. There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, as Ferdia says, I'm currently on Rathlin as part of a project chasing ferrets, but apart from just a wee plug about the project, I'm not really going to talk about that. So today, yeah, I'm just going to try and give you a bit of an overview of the history of the pine marten on the island of Ireland, the work that's gone into it, and the potential work that we should be addressing as we move forward. So yeah, our little friend the pine marten, or Cochrane, if I got my Irish correctly, which translates as tree cat. It's an Irish, it's a member of the mustelid family. So this is a group of carnivores that is more widely known as the weasel family. It's the most diverse group of carnivores across the world, of which there are 59 species and 6 found in Ireland. However, only 4 are considered native to the island of Ireland, with the ferret and the American mink being non-native. The American mink finds itself resident in Ireland following escapes and deliberate releases from the fur industry across the country. And as you know, the ferret is a domestic form of the European polecat, and there's evidence of feral populations established across the country, most likely a result of escapees from rabbit hunting and things like that. Rathlin, where I am, is home to a feral population that has been resident here since the 1980s, and it was deliberately released to control the rabbit population. So, as for the pine marten, it may be considered one of our native members of our fauna, but it's certainly not unique to Ireland. Its full name is the European pine marten, so you can see here it's got quite a wide distribution across Europe, from Portugal in the west to Russia in the east, and from Scandinavia in the north to Turkey and Iraq in the south. So it may not be unique to Ireland, but it's considered a native part of Ireland's fauna. Why is this? Well, someone came up with the definition of animals being present before 1600 AD as being the definition of a native species in Britain and Ireland. And there is evidence of the pine marten being present on the island of Ireland since about 2,800 to 3,000 years before present. So remains have been found in cave deposits in County Cork and County Waterford, and carbon dating of both specimens taken from these locations show that they come from this time period. However, there is suggestion that it may have been present longer, by as much as being as present since about 10,000 years before present, but no hard evidence of this exists at present. However, there is ongoing work at the minute re-evaluating what species were present here. So in the future, we may find out that it's been here a lot longer than we think. So it's been suggested that it colonised Ireland like a range of other animals following the retreat of the last glacial maximum. However, what is not known is what route it took to get here. Did it come from the Iberian Peninsula, or did it cross from Britain? Thankfully, we have Denise O'Meara joining us later today to talk about our work on the genetics of the species. So hopefully she might shed a little bit of light on that subject. However, it may yet be shown that the species' arrival in Ireland was at the hand of man, as has been suggested for other species in Ireland. So, you know, as this field develops, it'll be really interesting to see what geneticists like Denise have to say about introductions like this. So we've got physical evidence of the species being present since for at least 3,000 years, since the Bronze Age in Ireland. And there is written evidence of the species being present, but obviously it doesn't go back that far. The first occurrence of written records, potentially of the pine marten, is in this wonderful tome, Topographica Hibernica. So it's a hefty bit of work that was produced in the 12th century by a fella called Gerald of Wales. I think he was a monk that came over following the Norman conquest and started recording life here, and that included records of wildlife, you know, what people did, things like that. So there is a reference in that book of martens being plentiful in the woods. So we assume that he was referring to pine martens and not stone martens. But if Johnny Burks might be able to shed a little bit more light on that subject if you get chatting to him. So there's further reference as we move a bit closer to the current period, although not too close, that pine martens and the trade of their furs is mentioned in like 15th century writings. And there's one particular man that I need to highlight. There's a man from Limerick, no, it's not a joke, called Nicholas Arthur, who I believe holds the record for the number of times a person has been mayor of Limerick, having held the position 7 times. Anyway, in his writings, he talks about the trade in martens, particularly to England. He was a very interesting character, and if you want an aside and want to do some searching about him later, he was also kidnapped by pirates and ended up in a French prison for 2 years. So quite an eventful life. However, beyond him, further records exist of the trade in marten furs continuing from Ireland to England into the 17th century, but records of a trade disappear at this point. Why might this be? It's suspected that the population may have declined due to hunting and a decline in forest cover, which in the 17th century stood at about 1.5% of land in the island of Ireland. So forest cover did not begin to increase again until the 19th century, but unfortunately this coincided with the rise of game estates across Britain and Ireland, where we saw the widespread persecution of predatory birds and mammals as a response to protect the game species that were being managed in these locations. So unfortunately for us, records of the species in the late 19th century and mid 20th century are few and far between. That's not that they don't exist, they do, but there's not many. You had the odd record turning up in a local newspaper because it was such a notable event for a pine marten to be found. People like James Fairley have looked at the occurrence of historical records in this period, and they were finding, yes, the odd record, but the majority of records were restricted to the western counties of the island of Ireland. So where do we find them now? So it wasn't until the 1970s that interest in the rarest of Ireland's mammals led to Paddy O'Sullivan undertaking a national survey of the Republic of Ireland, where he conducted scat surveys by walking transects in forests in the late 1970s and early 80s. His work revealed the species still to be present in Ireland, but still largely restricted to the Midwest of the island, with pockets of isolated populations in the north and south. So if you look at the image on the left there, each dot represents a 10-kilometre square where Paddy would have undertaken a survey. The large dots indicate where he found pine marten scats. Sorry. Now there are squares included in Northern Ireland, but I don't believe Paddy actually surveyed those. But I'm not exactly sure of the history of those. I'd love to find out a bit more. But so these scat surveys were very much visual surveys. So he was identifying the scats based on the morphology of the scat. So in the 2000s, we really see an expansion in the research on pine marten on the island of Ireland. We see a massive explosion, really. Up until this point, work by the naturalist James Fairley and the work of Paddy O'Sullivan constituted the bulk of what had been done to date. However, the new millennium saw an increase in anecdotal records of the species, which prompted the second pine marten survey of Ireland to be conducted between 2005 and 2007, which was led by Declan O'Mahony. This work revisited sites originally part of O'Sullivan's first survey, and scats collected along transects had their identity confirmed via the power of genetics through the guys down in Waterford. So as you can see on the image on the left, the dark black squares indicate 10-kilometre squares that were surveyed where the presence of pine marten was confirmed via genetics. Well, the grey squares indicate locations that were surveyed, but there was no confirmation of the presence of the species. So if we compare that to the work done from the 1970s and the 80s, hopefully you'll agree that there has been a significant expansion eastwards. And what was important for this survey was that it included some sites in Northern Ireland. It wasn't a comprehensive survey, but work did take place there. The image on the right indicates the modelled range of the species in the island of Ireland at this time. So it's very much moving eastwards, which what we were quite pleased to see. So why the recovery? So what prompted it? Well, it's thought that two things combined to create the conditions for its recovery: the banning of strychnine and legal protection. So strychnine is a poison that was widely used to control rodents, birds and predators via poisonous baits. Its use was banned in the UK in 1963, except for the control of moles, where it was finally banned in 2006. And its use began to be more regulated in Ireland in the mid-1980s, until it was completely banned in 1991. So in addition, wildlife legislation, so the Wildlife Order in Northern Ireland and the Irish Wildlife Act, were brought in during the 70s and 80s, which saw this species added to schedules that protected it from disturbance and illegal killing. It's believed that, that these combined over time led to the gradual recovery of the species that were anecdotally observed in the early 2000s and then documented in Declan's nationwide survey in the noughties. So since then, as I say, there's been an absolute explosion. You know, from a period of not really knowing what's going on, we've progressed massively in our understanding of what's happening with the species on the island of Ireland. So we've seen repeat of distribution surveys undertaken in 2012 and 2019 by Colin Lawton and his team at the NUI in Galway. These were very much citizen science-led surveys, so not repeat of SCAT surveys, but these were surveys where it was like contacting members of the public, making people aware that they were seeking information. So if people had sightings or had videos or had footage of pine martens, they were asked to submit these records to the All Ireland Pine Marten and Squirrel surveys. So again, you can see moving from, if we consider from the 1980s up to 2019, we've got a significant expansion in the species distribution on the island of Ireland. So, so I have to plug the wee bit of work that I was doing myself and Josh has referred to earlier on. We've also done further work in Northern Ireland, where we initiated citizen science surveys with the use of camera traps to undertake standardised surveys of pine martens. This has been repeated by Ulster Wildlife and will continue to be repeated in the future, as Katie will likely talk about later today. It's provided the first population trends for the species on the island of Ireland. So basically, as you've seen this figure on the left from Josh's work, that shows, so the blue bars are the occupancy of squares by pine martens in Northern Ireland. So over the 5-year period of these surveys, we see the number of squares with the presence of pine marten in them increasing over time. So this is really important information. It's good to know where they are, but it's also essential that we understand how the population is behaving over time. This information is particularly important for European reporting for Article 17, because the pine marten is an Annex 5 species, so we need to understand what is happening to this population over time. So yeah, and this work has been absolutely fantastic, as Josh has talked about, because it has really informed our understanding of its interaction with the wider environment, the pine marten's interaction with the wider landscape in Northern Ireland, but also with other species within the landscape. So, and it's allowed us to actually begin modelling the distribution of the species, not just putting dots on maps, but inferring the presence of the species from the information that we've been able to collect. So it's quite exciting. So, I can't talk about populations without talking about the work of Pete Turner and Catherine O'Reilly at Waterford. Over the years, they and their masters and PhD students have undertaken a lot of work to explore the populations and abundance of species around the Waterford area. But this eventually manifested itself in the first national pine marten population assessment undertaken in 2016. Again, using genetic methods, Catherine, Declan O'Mahony, and numerous other people undertook surveys at a range of sites across the island and estimated the population of the species to be around just over 3,000 animals. So this was the first time we really had a good assessment of what the population of the species might be like on the island of Ireland. So in addition to this sort of work, you know, there's numerous people. I think Anya Lynch is speaking later today. Emma Shee, Jacinta Mullins, and others have contributed massively to our understanding of the species by contributing knowledge to what the diet of the species is, its interactions with parasites. Peter Stewart's been involved in that. So we've truly come on leaps and bounds in our knowledge of the species in the island of Ireland and how it fits into the ecology of the island. However, the species may be in a good situation at the moment, but to be honest, we don't want to get lax. If you look at the Irish Red List assessment, which Colin, Ferdia and Declan led on from, was that 2019, I think it was, the pine martens considered least concern. And again, the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature, its last assessment in 2015, stated that the population was stable across its range in Europe. So, but yeah, we have come on leaps and bounds, but so we know where it occurs in the landscape, what it eats, how it interacts with some of our other species. We do really lack a knowledge of how to live with this species. So having control of the wildlife that causes problems on our land, on our island, many people feel their hands are tied when it comes to the pine marten. So its return requires us to really readjust to its presence in the landscape again. And sadly, we have shown that many of us are unwilling to share our island with this amazing beast. We find ourselves in this situation as we've destroyed the species' primary habitat and failed to act to restore it. And all it has done is show its amazing ability to adapt to our highly modified landscapes. Thankfully, there are people attempting to develop solutions to the problems that are arising, and thankfully you'll hear of some of their efforts later today. Although some people view the pine marten's recovery as a negative, it should also be seen as a positive. Its recovery provides an opportunity for us to celebrate this native species and embrace it as part of our landscape and culture. John Mercer is one of many who have grasped this opportunity in Scotland and use this species as part of wildlife tourism. Ireland is famed for its tourism industry, yet we lag behind countries like Scotland by miles in utilising such a natural resource for that purpose. So to conclude, the pine marten and our little community have come a long way together in a short period of time. We'll undoubtedly continue to learn about the pine marten and how it interacts and responds to the landscape it finds itself in. But we have to make massive strides to avoid it being considered a pest species by many. This can only be done if we can work together and utilise our skills collectively, and to look to people like John Linnell and take lessons from their work. Only once we do that do we give Ireland's most charismatic mammal, squirrel fans, a chance of a secure future on this island and not repeat history. So thank you very much for listening to me. And that was a 100-mile-an-hour introduction to the history of the species in Ireland and the work we've gone behind. So thanks very much, everyone.
That's brilliant, Dave. Thank you very much. Anyone who wants a good laugh, have a look at Dave's profile photo in the abstracts, the book of abstracts, staring fondly at a pile of pine marten scat. That just about sums Dave up, to be honest with you. Yeah. Anyone got any questions for Dave before we let him go back to chasing ferrets? We're running a couple minutes behind, but we probably have time. Yeah, Hugh, please.
Quick question. Thanks, Dave, for that overview of pine martens in Ireland. I find it really interesting, especially from a Welsh perspective, where we're experiencing the first stages of pine marten recovery. You mentioned 3,000 estimated number in Ireland. Is there a number projected to the future on the basis of woodland recovery and habitat recovery, and also expansion of range of the pine marten?
I'm not aware of anybody undertaking such future planning when considering the pine marten population, but people like Dick and Manny and Denise and Catherine, they may be more informed to answer that question. But it's probably it would be a really good thing to look at. To be honest, I don't think there's not much. There is a general plan over here for, I know in the north of Ireland, for a forestation rate. Where that's going to occur is very unclear at the moment. So I think that will be very, very important to understand if we're going to make such attempts like that. I don't know if such plans exist in the Republic, but it'd be kind of cool if we could get that information and work with it. As for locations of recovery, one part of Northern Ireland where the species doesn't seem to be making too much of a comeback is in County Derry. Why that is, not really sure at the minute. So that's, we've got a watch and brief in that area. Hopefully Katie will be able to provide a few more insights into that. But basically, wherever there's woodland, you will find pine martens. And the woodlands are very limited up here, but we do find them using other habitats, such as heath, quite a lot. And yeah, we could probably do some planning, but it's not been done yet, if that's a long-winded way of answering your question, sorry.
No questions online, but I was thanking Dave in the chat and accidentally sent it to everybody. So thank you for especially capturing the extent of speakers we have today. You've really encapsulated that, because we're covering so many aspects, and we're very lucky to have so many of the researchers on the call, like Colin, like Emma. So we're grateful, and thanks, Dave. Really, really fascinating talk.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks very much.